Welcome to my review of Mercs for the Sega Genesis. And this is a port of the original arcade game. It doesn't have a two-player mode like the arcade, but it has something that I like better, and it has a whole nother campaign called Original Mode, which is a whole different layout of levels. And it has a survival mechanic where, if you die, you're permanently dead, but you have multiple characters that you can recruit as you venture through the journey. You acquire more characters, and they have their own weapon that's assigned to them, basically. So they basically have their own abilities. So if you have your flamethrower guy, you may not want him to die if you like using his weapon. You also, of course, each character that you have serves as a whole nother life. So it's a very interesting mode with a survival kind of mechanic to it. Very cool. But the initial mode that I'm showing here is arcade mode. And that's the standard arcade layout, with the same levels and everything as the arcade version. But you don't see many ports that actually include an entirely new campaign, added. Most arcade ports are pretty straightforward. They're a lot of times worse than the arcade version. Now NES had some games that actually were better than the arcade versions, even though the graphics were a little bit worse. They added some things like Gyrus adds bosses to the arcade game. Now, of course, Double Dragon for NES was a completely different game, but there were games that actually were better than the arcade versions. And this is one of those arcade ports that's actually better than the arcade original. So that was very cool to see. I used to rent this game from a grocery store. They had cheap rentals, and I would rent it occasionally. And it was one that I definitely went back to when I was renting games. And yeah, I liked this game a lot. It was a really good game. It's one of the earlier Genesis games. I believe it's based off of a Capcom arcade game, but it was released as one of the black box Sega games. So it's one of those classic, original Genesis games, pretty much. I'm not sure if it was a launch game, but it was probably close to that time period. So as you go through the areas, you collect these missile power-ups, which will give you these screen-clearing bombs. You see I have 5 of them in stock now. You can use them to clear out the screen or to damage bosses heavily, so they're good to save up. You can also pick up turkeys and shit like that and hamburgers to replenish your health. You do have a life bar. It's not one-hit deaths like a lot of arcade games, so you can get some health back. And when you lose all your life, you will just lose a continue. There's no lives, but your continues are basically your lives. I think you have a few continues to beat the game. So it can be pretty challenging, but it's not too hard with enough practice. I will link my tutorial that I made with commentary in the description, which will help to beat both. I have actually 2 tutorials, one for arcade mode and another one for the original mode, it's called, which is the survival style mode, which I'm also going to show in this review. So yeah, you can actually get into vehicles. There's boats, there's jeeps, and various vehicles that you can take over. So it adds some nice variety as you're driving through and killing shit. And you have a nice variety of weapons. You see I have the spread shot here. There's missiles, there's a flamethrower, there's a nice variety of weapons. I believe there's a laser gun. The spread shot, just like in Contra, is one of the better weapons that I usually try to get. It doesn't do as much damage as the missiles, but it has such a wide range. So here in Mission 5, you're fighting a train. This is one of the more challenging bosses. It can be tricky. If you like games like Bloody Wolf for the TurboGrafx in arcade, then you would definitely like this game. This game is probably even better than Bloody Wolf. So for this boss, you have to take out some of the turrets first, and then you can finish off the boss. It's a cool boss. But the game has nice action. It's not on the level of some of the Shock Troopers games for the Neo Geo AES and arcade, obviously, because those were arcade games as well. And I posted those up on the channel as well. I believe I have a tutorial for the first game. But this is an older game, but it's not quite at the level of those games. Which Shock Troopers was actually quite a bit better than this. It's a really good fucking game in this style. Probably the best one I played in this style. But pretty much what you see is what you get. You fight the bosses, you get your weapon pickups, you just try to progress through the levels, and you try to make your continues last until the end. So I will show the conclusion of the game as well, so you can see how it ends. And you can see there's the hamburgers. You can pick those up for some health. But yeah, it's pretty much a straightforward action game. There's no puzzles, there's no getting lost or anything like that. Just a very straightforward, action game where you just have to try to, play well and survive. My favorite part of the game, though, is the extra campaign that they added, the original mode, because it really makes it interesting when you have that survival mechanic with having to try to survive and keep your players alive. You have to manage their health by healing certain characters, by giving them food and stuff like that, because you can switch out the characters at any time once you've recruited them. So if one is low on health, you may want to switch to the other and give them some health back, like let them get the healing items and shit like that. So there's a whole strategy to it, which makes it even a better game, in my opinion. The added tactical, nature of that mode, I think it makes it even more enjoyable. But there's a lot of replay because, you got this mode, and then you got that, you got the original mode as well, which is harder. It's harder than the arcade mode because, you got to try to survive off of a few characters. I believe the game may have difficulty settings as well, as a lot of these games do have, but I'm not completely sure because I haven't played in a while. So, that may give it some replay if that's available. I'm not sure about that. So, you see, after completing arcade mode, which is about to happen in a moment, after you destroy this plane, then you'll have the original mode. So, you'll see that in a moment. I'm going to show some of that and how that works. So yeah, that's the end of the arcade mode. And you can start on either mode. You don't have to beat arcade mode to unlock original mode. You can start on whichever mode you want. Okay, yeah, there is options. I believe the options has your difficulty level and shit like that. So you can set it up harder as well. You have rapid options, various things like that, and there's arcade and original. It's odd that you can select arcade and original in the options, and you can select arcade and original in the main menu. I'm not sure what the difference is, but if you select original mode in the main menu, then you start this completely unique campaign. It uses the same visual assets as the arcade mode, but the layouts are completely different as far as where everything is laid out, and the enemy arrangements and all that shit is all different. And the main thing with this mode is that you're going to recruit characters as you get farther. See, at this point I have 2 characters that I can recruit. I rescued one guy, the flamethrower guy, so I'm using him now. So I now have 2 characters, but you can see there's 5 slots. So eventually you'll fill that up and have all 5 characters. As long as none of them die, of course, on your way. But you want to try to keep them all alive. You do have more disposable characters that are really not that good, I think. Like, some of their weapons are kind of shitty, so you may want to use them for the easier parts to conserve your health, so your better characters survive longer. So you can see how there would be a lot of strategy to selecting characters in a certain order and swapping out your characters at any time to try to keep the health up on your characters that are dying. Because then you can try to heal them later. But once one of the characters dies, there's no continues. The character is permanently dead, which I really enjoyed about the game. I really like that strategy aspect. It gives it like a tension, to try to survive the mode. So if you make it to the end of the game, you basically have 5 lives to beat this game. But if you, you only have 5 lives once you've rescued the other 4 characters, because those are your lives. But once you get a feel for the mode, none of this game is really that hard to beat. Either the original or normal mode are both not very hard, but they're a decent challenge initially, and will take some practice. But neither one is super hard. I don't remember the exact amount of time that both of these modes took me to complete. I most likely detailed that in my playthrough videos and my tutorials, which I will Link in the description. I believe in original mode, this may be a unique final boss. I don't know if this boss was in the arcade mode. Yeah, so that's it. So for me, this game is an 8 out of 10. I would highly recommend it. It has a lot of replay with the 2 modes. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching.